All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks a bunch for making time to watch this. I'm Hunter Taylor, author of Draw the Line, which comes out tomorrow, June 28th. And this is our final episode. Throughout this series, we've gotten to talk with some of the actual people who deserve a ton of credit for influencing either the story and or the entire culture that is East Texas high school football. If you go to the book's website at huntertaylor.design, click on Draw the Line, you can watch the first 5 episodes. We had Danny Long with broadcaster David Smoke. We followed that up with Coach Metzel, Coach Johnson, and CBS 19's Reagan Roy Young. Then we had Coach Surratt, Coach Boyette, 24/7 scouting analyst Gabe Brooks. Followed that one up with former member of the 2014 Gilmer State Championship team and current NFL player Blake Lynch, along with Inside Texas's Justin Wells. And the last one we did was with UIL Athletic Director Dr. Susan Elza, president of the THSCA, and Longview Lobos head football coach John King, and award-winning writer for the Longview News Journal, Jack Stallard. All the episodes have been amazing and are also on YouTube by simply looking up Draw the Line interviews. And now for this one, and it's kind of sad because it's coming to an end right here, but we're going with a bang. We got Coach Traylor, head football coach for the UTSA Roadrunners and former head coach, athletic director of the Gilmer Buckeyes. And joining us is the co-host of the premier Friday night radio show in East Texas, KYKX, is Harlen the Sports Guy. Guys, thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to do it.
Well, Coach, I know you've seen a couple of them. I think you've seen most. First 5 episodes, I mean, we tried to get as many people that we thought would be fun to have weigh in on this subject that were connected to you or competed against you or covered you. Like, how does it feel to have, that many people, I mean, willingly say, hey, whatever you need, I'm in?
It's been very humbling, honestly. I might not have seen all of them like from beginning to end, but I have. Everybody sends me their favorite part, right? The joke that might have been said or the funny story. There's a lot of great memories, and I can't wait. This weekend, Jordan, Jake, and JC are all flying in, and Carrie and I we're all getting out of here for about 8 days. So I hope I can just be by a beach and get some Wi-Fi and maybe just catch up on all the things. But yeah, it's been very humbling. And each one of those people you just mentioned, I could go on and on and on about how they have helped me with my career and have always been so supportive. And you don't get to these positions without the help of everybody along the way. And I know that it sounds just very cliche, but I mean every word of that when I say it. You just don't get here without the help of all those people you mentioned.
Just curious, any favorite parts of anything that you've seen or been sent to you? Anything that really sticks out?
What it is kind of like Harlan, just showing me that pride cap. There's so many things I've just forgotten because I just literally live in the moment. Like I'm literally terrified. We play Houston 81 days, right? And that's all I think about is that. And it's my greatest strength, but it's also my greatest weakness because it's okay to reflect. It's okay to look back occasionally, but I don't do that very well. I'm always on the next thing. But I will admit it's just going down memory lane. I only played the head coach card very few times in my career, but one of those was I drove to the games and by myself with Matt and Alan at the end of my career. And our favorite thing to do, because once Smokey kind of got out of there, it was literally just Harlan and Pigskin. That was it. And I could not wait to get in my truck and hear them. They were so freaking hilarious. And then we started winning, and everybody just hated us. So you were either all Gilmer or you were totally anti-Gilmer. There was no in between. And they were the best. They'd rile that crap up, man. They get those people just going. And they either put me on a pedestal, which I didn't belong, or they put me in the mud as the biggest cheater in America, which I didn't belong there either. There was no in between. But I used to laugh till I cried, and I became dear friends with both of them. And I'd stop in the studio, and we'd go have lunch, and it truly became a real friendship. And but I had a blast. A lot of times at my own expense, they're making fun of me, but it was still a blast.
And I got to say, I'll jump in right there and say that it was really rewarding for us. Jeff Traylor was the first coach that really kind of, acknowledged us and warmed up to us as we were getting going about the same time he started, doing well at Gilmer. So our paths have mirrored a lot. But having Jeff as an ally, in those early days when our show was just getting going, and, when we had Coach Traylor coming into the studio on a Friday night when they were on a bye week, Terry was waiting in the car for them to go see a movie. He would stop in the studio, come say hey, and this and that. And it really added a lot of, it gave a stamp of approval that, Jeff Traylor has time for it. Maybe you can make time for us too, Coach. And we always really appreciated that. And, I have to tell my favorite Jeff Traylor story.
Harlen, one thing is your microphone adjusted? You're lower than you were a second ago.
I don't know. I've never been accused of not being loud enough. How about now?
It's a little better. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try and speak up. Coach Traylor, we were doing our preseason interviews, and Coach Traylor always came in every year. We had to have him in our preseason interviews. And Bob had a serious knee injury, where he tore every CL that the knee had. And Coach Traylor and I were going to lunch before we did the interview, and he stopped and picked me up. We're headed to lunch. He said, "Where's Bob?" And I told him what happened. And he had this severe knee injury, and he was still in the hospital at the time. And Coach Traylor was like, "Well, which hospital? We're going to see him. Let's go see him right now." And he was that personable and thoughtful of all the members of the media. But I can only speak to Bob and I, but he really, he was the coach that said, "Let's go see Bob. He's in the hospital and he's suffering." And it was a bad knee injury, and Coach Traylor made time to go see him. It always touched me that he thought that dearly of all the members of the media.
Yeah, but they're the only ones that I can still remember when we won our state championship, and I filled out my ring request from Balfour, and I'll never forget Rick Albritton calling me on the telephone, going, "You really expect me to buy those two guys a state championship ring?" I said, "Yeah. Do you understand how much support they give us? It's unbelievable. They're covered." He's like, "Jeff, half of them are calling you a cheater and they're saying terrible things about us." I'm like, "Look, that's just part of the deal. As long as we're getting publicity, Mr. Albritton, it's good. It doesn't matter if they're mad at us or loving us. It's all good." He's like, "All right." So he got them 2 state championship rings. And I believe that's a true story. I did get y'all state championship rings. Am I making that up, or is that true?
In 9 and 14. I got
That's
on my mantle right.
Hey, never let the facts get in the good way of a good story. I want to make sure I remember things correctly. I appreciate that.
When we told John King when they were playing in 18, we were like, "Hey, Jeff gave us rings when he won. Well, I'm going to give you rings if we win this thing."
That's
he
awesome.
Followed through too.
That's awesome. I love me some John King. There ain't no one better than John King.
Well, so we're recording this early, but this will release on the 27th, and obviously the week this releases, we've got events scheduled. You got on the 30th in Gilmer, we're going to do a book event, Duds on the Lake, and they've promoted it, and they've been promoting it that the hometown guys coming in. And then the very next day on July 1st, in the Tomato Bowl press box, we're going to do something. And I guess, I know you don't take a lot of time to reflect, but have you thought or connected with anybody just about, man, I can't wait to see this setting, this person, this group, and just be able to celebrate, because you don't get to see people like that very often.
I don't, but my cell phone number hasn't changed. I sell the exact same number, and all the people that would care to see me or are participating in this book, I pretty much stay in contact with. They're all my closest people, know how busy I am, so they don't bother me as much, but they always let me know they're there. And, that's been the funniest thing was like today, my mom, which you had to deal with this, is my mom's like, "You're going to be here on the 30th? I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." "What time?" I said, "I don't know, Mom. I know Hunter asked me to be there. I haven't looked." I said, "Mom, I live literally one day at a time. If my DFO and my media people don't tell me where I am, I don't know where the heck I'm going most of the time." well, I've already put in a call to Dr. Taylor, and he's going to call me back and let me know. I said, well, Mom, I hope you can make it. That'd be pretty cool. So I do know at least my mom's going to show up. That I know.
No, she was awesome. She was so excited about it. So that's pretty cool.
It's making me like my dad's not in good health right now. So I have been coming home for any reason I can. But it's also making me schedule in, Gilmer and Jacksonville. And that's going to be, some of my earliest memories, that 85 Camaro I bought my senior year in high school. I drove it all the way until 1999. And I remember Danny bringing me in and saying, Jeff, you do know you're like one of the hottest young coaches in East Texas, and everybody's fixing to start wanting to interview you for a job. They're not going to want to hire a kid that's 29 years old driving a 85 Camaro with T-tops. You're going to have to let that thing go. I'm like, Danny, I can't let that thing go. I mean, that was my pride and joy. I can remember driving to work every day. I lived with my mom and dad my very first year. Carrie and I were not married. Carrie was still in college, finishing up her, teaching certification. I lived with my mom and dad in Gilmer, and I drove back and forth every day to Big Sandy. And I can remember listening to Garth Brooks and Clint Black like it was yesterday, and just dreaming of being the head coach at Big Sandy, and then maybe the head coach at Gilmer, and then maybe being the head coach at Longview one day. And man, getting rid of that 85 Camaro was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. Be a grown up and go buy a Ford truck in Jacksonville, Texas. But Coach Long he was right. It was probably time with the 85 Camaro go.
I know everybody knows obviously about the Gilmer, how important that is to your story, who you are, all that. Talk about Jacksonville though, and the fact that I think that's one of the cooler things, how that community, they wanted in on this, and there's so many people involved that were like, this is a big part of the story too. And it is in the book, but just for people that aren't aware, Jacksonville.
It's the biggest part of the story. It really is. In my development, man, I was seeking. I knew there was more out there. I just had never seen it done right. I'm a crier. I laugh. I love people. I hug. And I worked for two men that were just tougher than hell. I mean, they were tough men. And I'm not trying to say they made me feel like I wasn't a coach, but I could tell I was considered. I loved basketball. I loved hoops. I couldn't wait to go to the gym. And you got to remember, it's the early 90s now. So I was seen as soft and not very tough. I'd never be a great coach. And man, meeting Danny was a real game changer for me, because Danny laughed and Danny cried. Danny was from Cali. He saw the world differently. He doesn't see the world like anybody else. But it was just good for me to see it done a different way. And then for Matt Turner and Wayne Coleman to be on the scene for me in that time, the relationship with the McCallans, Josh, Randy, and Luke, and then their father and mother, Pat and Robin. There's a man named Larry Fold in there, Joe Ballard, my Sunday school teachers, Bruce Webb and Daryl Dunt were our pastors. It was a critical moment for me, because Jordan was just born, started going to Promise Keepers, coaches outreach, teaching a Sunday school class with Dr. Larry Folden and Joe Ballard. I just wanted more. And man, those guys poured into me. And and I'm far from perfect. Y'all know I love to have fun. I'm an imperfect person, coaching imperfect people. And but those guys really said to me, like, Jeff, you can teach Sunday school because you can reach, you're more of a human than the rest of us. You can reach a certain group of people the rest of us can't reach. And I really bought into that God can hit a straight lick with a crooked stick. And I'm living proof of a crooked stick. And but God can use you. Because I'll never be Matt Turner or Alan Metzel. Like I want to be them. I pray every night to be more like them. That's just not the way I'm hardwired. I'm very fleshly. I'm very human, and I love to have a lot of fun. And those years were Dick Sheffield was so huge for me. He poured into me like crazy, like I was his grandson. He never ever bragged on me. All he did was humble me at all times. But I knew he loved me unconditionally, and I knew he knew I was special in his eyes. So those were the most important years. I mean that with all. That's where I grew up the most. Those 6 seasons there, I became a man. And Danny was, as much as I couldn't wait to get out of there, because he just drove me nuts. And I was a whooping boy early in that. Boy, he got a lot smarter when I left. And I called him all the time there early, because all I know was everything I thought I knew. I didn't know anything. I didn't know a thing, except I knew Olin Johnson was special. And I rode him like I stole him, and he won me 6 games, and it made him think I was smart to buy me some time before I figured out how to coach.
Every time we would go and interview Coach Traylor in those early days, I mean, there was not a conversation that happened where he didn't talk about Danny Long and the influence that he had on his coaching career, and always, he paid homage to who he learned from. And I was like, every conversation, Danny Long. And I never met him, but I got to kind of know him through Jeff, and I know how important he was to your career.
He was so much fun to get to talk to early on. I told you that of like, my gosh, he can own a room and tell a story. And I mean, you can tell this is an inspiring leader. So, yeah, he was everything that you said and more, getting to meet him in person. And I was like, Harlen, that's somebody you got to have on the show one time, just because he's a storyteller.
Oh, you would love him. Really, y'all two would become best friends like overnight. Like you would, you would love him, and you would love his stories because y'all are about the same things. And I can remember him so many times. Like, Jeff, you've got to quit taking 8 kids in that Camaro at one time. You got your whole basketball team in there at one time, driving them around. No T-tops. You're going to get in trouble on that side of town. I'm like, Coach, them kids, man, they ain't nothing gonna happen to us. We're gonna be fine, Coach. We're gonna be fine. Those same kids in Jacksonville, they taught me so much. At Big Sandy, I never wanted to leave any place I've been yet. Like, I cried when I packed my office up in Big Sandy. I did not want to go to Jacksonville. Danny called me. I didn't even apply for the job. Phil Jones and Ken Jones worked at East Texas Sports Center, and they told Danny I was a really good coach. And that's how Coach heard about me. Now, I think they also know Danny's going to put me in charge of the budget, and which he did. And that's what an associate head coach title is. I've had them my whole life. That's every job the head coach doesn't want to do. And Danny gave me all of them, right? So I think East Texas Sports Center was just placing me in there to make sure they got all the business out of Jacksonville.
Well, I thought this was cool too. I think I told you this, but around mid-July, Marshall's going to host an event too. And they're talking now of getting Coach Parker to come in for it with Coach Long and obviously that crew. How cool is that? Because I know even though you didn't work in Marshall, that's part of the tree. And
well, think about that, Hunter. If you really want to get crazy, I mean, I am not close to Dennis because the only way I am is through Danny.
Yes,
I do know Dennis, and I've had many conversations. Much respect. I think he's an outlier. I think he's different. I have a lot of respect for guys that go into places and can just flip a whole town. That's hard to do, and it takes a larger-than-life personality. And Dennis had that in Marshall, right? But the deal was it got me in alignment with D.W. Rutledge.
Yep.
And D.W. Rutledge is the guy in San Antonio. He's like the guy.
Yeah.
And like I feel strongly he's as much the reason why I got this job as anybody. Because my president, Taylor Amy, and my athletic director, Dr. Lisa Compost, knew they had made a mistake the first time by not going to the THSCA. So when they went through DW this time to ask who the guy was, DW put my name up there, and DW introduced me at my press conference. You look back December 9, 2000, I think DW Rutledge introduced me. So who knows, how all that was really intertwined. I would imagine one day Dr. Compost and President Amy will tell me what really happened. But you know how that is. They don't tell you that kind of stuff till they fire you and you're out of the business for a while. They don't do that while you're in the middle of it.
No, that's such a cool thing because, it originated Converse Judson, then it breaks off, and it's almost like this full circle deal where now you're working how many miles away from Converse Judson.
I have 9 players on my team from there. I'm playing golf at Tapatía last summer, and Kurt and I are driving on the golf course. And hell, I recognize Frank Arnold, like it's nothing. And of course, Frank Arnold didn't know me from Adam. And so we drive by each other, miss each other. Then we come by the next time, and he kind of does a double take. And I said, yeah, Coach Arnold, it really is me. And we had a great conversation. But, Frank was on that Converse Judson. And I mean, it's just, they're all down here. It's been a really cool experience for me.
It's awesome. Well, I know you'll see this hopefully over your vacation that you got coming up. Blake Lynch had a great interview he gave on our episode 4. I mean, just it was phenomenal.
He's one of those another 100 that got people just roaring. They made their show. Now that just got those guys. Him and GJ Kenny were probably the 2 that I took the most heat for. And truly, I mean, we didn't do anything improper whatsoever. I mean,
right.
the kids wanted to come there. And even Danny, like my closest people are still like, you've always been the Big 12 recruiter of the year. I don't know why they just now make you Big 12 recruiter of the year. I'm like, well, you don't have to recruit. You don't have to. When you win and you build facilities, Scott Surratt's not recruiting. Those kids are moving in there. John King's not recruiting. Those kids are moving in there. You don't have to recruit. Your program recruits itself. People that say that really don't understand what they're saying when they say that. It's just easy target. But yeah, Blake and GJ, I told both of them they were worth it, but they caused me a lot of grief. But it sure helped David Smoke and Harlen out. I guarantee you got the fans roaring.
Well, and I'll say this, we get a lot of phone calls because we do a lot of those on the show. And like you said, it's still got a jealousy. And it's more times than often, we would tease you, and most of that was in person, but publicly, we would always say, hey, if you had a kid who was a star wide receiver, running back, quarterback, whatever, offensive lineman, where would you want him to play? I would want my son, if I have 3 daughters, if I had a son, I would want him to play for Jeff Traylor, Scott Surratt, John King. And you would find a way to get him into those programs. And you're right, it was all of our phone callers that would say stuff like that. It was usually out of jealousy.
How special is Blake, though? How deep of a kid is he? Just on another level. And that's one of the most unique people I've ever coached in my entire life. And what his mother and him went through, and his sister, and how we took care of them. And it's very private, but that was a stressful time in that young man's life. Our whole community just embraced him. That's just Gilmer, though. I guess because we're a bunch of misfits in Gilmer, we've always kind of been the outcast, we're a very accepting community. We don't judge because we've always been the ones being judged. And I take tremendous pride. The thing I'm the most proud of all of this is how much the perception of Gilmer has changed in the last 22 years. And Rick Albritton and that school board deserve all that credit. I was such a pain in their ass. I know privately they're all glad I'm gone privately because I was just such a pain in their ass. I was relentless, and that was my hometown. And by God, it was going to be the best one. And I wasn't going to stop until it was, right? Well, you don't get that done when you're the head football coach. You can talk about it all you want to. You can do all you want to. The superintendent of schools and the school board are the only ones that can make that happen. And Rick Albritton and those school board members, they'll never tell y'all, but I promise you privately, they're like, I hope he stays down there in San Antonio.
Yeah, you were gone about 15 minutes and they named the stadium.
Yeah, that was like to make sure he doesn't come back.
but no, I use that all the time, Jeff, as I talk to community members at whatever community that where they're not doing well, and they'll, we'll never be good at football. And I said, that's absolutely not true. I've seen it. And I use Gilmer often as an example. In the 90s, Gilmer wasn't Gilmer. They were just another school that might make the playoffs as the third team in the playoffs. But what Jeff cultivated there was the buy-in from the administration, from the superintendent on down, Rick Albritton, who got me in Bob Rings. Thanks to Jeff. And allowing the coach to build something in the community. Look what Terry Lane was doing at Pine Tree.
Unbelievable.
Look what Rex Sharp did in Sabine. Sabine was a laughing stock in East Texas for how many years? And a man like Rex Sharp goes in there, the school board gets behind them, and all of a sudden they're making playoffs and winning and doing well, winning their first playoff game in 70-something years. This story can be retold. Look at Scott Surratt and Parker.
I was just fixing to say it.
They were terrible. The stadium was condemned. And I think his first job as a coach was to pass a bond.
It was.
To help build up the facilities there. And it can be done. It takes the community, the administration, the coach, and the kids. But really that coach leading those kids to the promised land. And no better example of that than Jeff.
On that subject, I don't know that everybody knows this, but our press box was condemned my first season at Gilmer. We built 2 deer stands. So one deer stand was for the home team and the other deer stand was for the visiting team. That's how the Gilmer Buckeyes started. That's how Olin Johnson played his senior year in a condemned press box with 2 deer stands up there. It doesn't get much worse than that. We were in the same field house I dressed in, and it was terrible when I played there in the 80s. So It takes, but Dennis Alexander was huge for me. Watching that, Jack Murphy, we always beat them in junior high, but when we played them on Fridays, we always lost to them. And I was like, now wait a minute, if we've got more talent than them on Thursdays, we can't beat them on Fridays. Coaching must matter. I mean, Dennis Alexander and Jack Murphy must be really good. So those guys were huge for me. What Andy did at White Oak, what a great deal he did there for White Oak back in the day. There's just so many of those guys that were in my career early. Somebody I was in the 7th grade when Gilmer went to state in 1981, and Tommy Wagner was our head coach. And we did have a plan. I remember having a plan. And then I remember I went through like 3 or 4 head coaches the next 5 years. And I just could remember being at Stephen F. Austin State, and Greg Owens was there, and he came from Sulphur Springs. He knew how to do everything. He knew how to hang clean, power clean, vertical jump, run the 40, bench press properly. He knew what a 3 technique was, 6 technique, cover 3, cover 1, cover 4. And I'm like, how in the hell do you know all that? He's like, man, I have a great coach in Coach Poe at Sulphur Springs. He taught me all this stuff. I had none of that. Greg can vouch for this. I remember telling Greg, one day I'm going to go back to Gilmer, and all my kids are going to know how to do all that stuff. And when we go to college, we're not going to be standing in the back of the line watching Greg Owens. We're going to be in the front of the line showing people how to do all this stuff. And so it was early in my career as a kid. I wanted to do that. Ron Boyette was huge for me. Dan Knoll at White Oak. I could watch those kids. They didn't have the talent we did, but they would beat us. And I'd watch what a powerful influence Dan was and Ron was. And I wanted to be that. So there were so many people. There was a man named Doug Duke at Gladewater. There was our arch rival. He saw something in me. He would work with me at basketball and baseball in the summers. He was the head basketball coach and head baseball coach at Gladewater. And I beat him 2 years in a row my senior year at the free throw line in the last seconds. And I've often wondered if Coach Duke ever was sitting there going, well, dang, I wish I wouldn't have taught Jeff how to do all that stuff. He brought me to basketball camps at Shreveport. He brought me to Don Eddy basketball camps. It was just unbelievable. The men in my life that poured into me, as I reflect back now, that just helped me become who I am.
When Hunter came to you with the idea to do the book, what was your initial thought?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
When Hunter came to you with the idea to do the book, what was your initial thought?
It seemed like it was so long ago. It's hard. It seemed like you were working on your doctoral possibly, and it was like a project you were on. If I'm remembering correctly, I just love Hunter and his father, Bruce. I would trust them with anything. And anything Hunter knows, I know it's going to be done with like what my spirit is. I'm very uncomfortable, honestly, when I hear Hunter play like the tidbits of me speaking. It just makes me want to cringe. I sound so country. I tease people, that not only do I talk slow, but I hear slow too. So they need to slow down when they're speaking to me, right? So I cringe that it's about me, kinda, but because so many of y'all get to be involved in it to help tell the story, because y'all all are a part of it. Hunter's doing it the right way, and I can't wait to really read through it all. He's tried his best to keep me included in it. But, since we started this thing, where was I, Hunter, when you actually started it?
In Texas. It was year 1. It was right after year 1.
Well, so my life's changed quite a bit.
Yeah. A lot. So,
I have finished it. It's a fantastic read. It brings back so many great memories of that year. I think Bob and I called 4 of your games that year. We did the Carthage game during our game of the week, and then we did the Gladewater game on Orange and Black Fridays, and then the semifinal, and then the championship game, and it's such great memories.
I've coached Texas OU, Texas Notre Dame, Arkansas LSU, Arkansas Alabama, UTSA UAB. I've been in conference championship games. I've done some pretty cool stuff, right? A bunch of bucket list stuff that I was going to do as a high school coach and pay for it, and now somebody's actually paying me to do it, which is really cool. But I will say this with all seriousness. I still have never had a feeling like the Gladewater Gilmer game 2014. One of my most vivid memories is my brother, who I love dearly. He's the most loyal coach in America. But I remember when Gladewater was driving, and that last drive, I saw he took his headphones off, and he had waved the white flag, right? And we're the black flag. That's what we are. Surrender until death. I mean, that's who we are, and we're the black flag defense. And I turned around, I said, don't put those damn headsets back on. We stop them. He said, bro, we ain't stopping Daily Matt. We ain't stopped him all night. I'm like, that big rascal's going to get tired at some point. And when we stopped them, and I saw Curry put them headsets back on, I'm like, oh, hell no. You keep them headsets off, bro. You done waved the white flag. We the black flag here. So I still bust Kurt's chops about that. And trust me, I wanted to take my headsets off too. I did not really believe we were going to stop that big rascal. And true story, 88 yards, 48 seconds. We worked the exact situation the day before, the seconds and the yards. And don't tell me Desmond Pollard wasn't involved in that.
And it came out to be the exact amount of seconds, didn't it?
100%. And we took the field. True story. We call a hitch and pitch on the very first play. And they are in a 2-deep zone, which they never are. It's the worst call in America to call hitch and pitch in the 2-deep zone. Their corner is in cover 2. He is all over Nick Smith. And Matt's freaking out. This is a bad play call. I'm like, Matt, hell, it ain't going to matter. Our kids will make it work. Let it go. We're fine. Nick McLean throws the most incredible ball on the upfield shoulder. Nick catches it, pitches it back to Chris Boyd, which is what we're trying to do anyway. And that cover 2 corner had come in so far, it allowed Chris to go 20 more yards down the sideline, run out of bounds, which is the plan because it stops the clock, right? So our kids were just phenomenal executing that. I mean, McLean went to, so many players, Quinn Fluellen, guys that you probably wouldn't think of immediately. And then everybody thinks about the call we made, there on the draw to win the game. We could have clocked it, and all we had to have was a field goal to win the ball game. So if we wouldn't have scored, we would have got the first down. We could have clocked it and kicked it. It wasn't as great a call as everybody makes it out to be. But, the winners get to write the history books, right? So we're writing the story. So heck of a call.
That's one of my favorite stories is the next week we were interviewing you for the semifinal game. And we were like, Coach, that was such a genius call. I couldn't believe you called a draw. You're a genius. And you said, Harlan, I handed the ball to the most talented player on the field. Doesn't take a genius.
Think players, not plays. Think players, not plays.
It's one of my best memories is that game at Lobo Stadium. I think it gets John King a little bit with the biggest crowd ever at Lobo Stadium. Wasn't for a Lobo game. It was for Gilmer Buckeye.
Better than that, it was Thanksgiving week, and John couldn't find any help. Like, we didn't have much security. Like, there was not many people working at the concession stands, but John is such an amazing human. He's going to do what's best for East Texas. He never does really what's best for Longview. It's always what's best for – he knows they are like East Texas. He gets it, right?
Yeah. There
was, like, no security there that night. On my sideline, like, everybody was down there. Like, there was nowhere to go. Media, Gilmer people, just people everywhere. One of my favorite stories is when Chris came running off the field, I don't know if we got Chris back out there for the 2-point play. I don't even think McLean made it back out there. I think they were all up celebrating in the stands, and we needed to go to 2. I forgot the exact score, to go up by whatever it was, by 4, whatever it might have been. And I remember we ran the play, and Chase Tate just went out there and took the play from McLean because McLean went out there and Chase made a 2-point play. What a great group of kids, and man, they were special. I knew that night we were going to win it after that. Now, when we were going in at halftime, just getting our teeth kicked in by West Orange Star, I thought things probably getting a little bit crazy. But Chris Boyd, for the first time in his life, decided to coach at halftime. And he asked me if he could speak. And I'm like, sure, which is scary in its own right. But he got up there, and, man, you could tell he was special. Now, what people also don't know is Chris quit on me the year before against Argyle. He tapped out. He literally tapped out of the game. Well, I drug his ass out of class and to the state championship game. And we watched Argyle, and I made him sit right beside me his junior year. And I said, the only reason we're not down there right now is you. The only reason, because you ain't got the guts to freaking hang in there against Argyle. They were tattooing your butt. He's like, Coach, I promise you, I'll get you back here next year. I'll get you back, and we'll win it. And he did. And that's a true story. Chris will vouch on that.
You talked about Blake, Chris, this kind of stuff. I thought one of the best interviews, just it's not on one of these episodes, but just in like doing research for the book, that I thought he talked with so much maturity, was McLean Carter. Talk about him.
I loved the kid when he was little, and what a rough life to grow up being G.J. Kenny's brother. Yeah. And he was not like G.J. G.J. in the 9th grade was stronger than all the kids. McLean was the weakest one in the 9th grade. And I can remember encouraging him when he was little, like McLean, the only thing you can do that your brother's never done is win a state championship. He's never done that. That's something you can do. Well, he got impatient on me, and he wanted me to promise him the starting quarterback job his junior year, and I wasn't going to do it. Tanner Barr was a returning quarterback. If McLean beat him out, I was going to let him have it. If he didn't, he didn't. So McLean chose to leave, and it crushed me because I loved him and his family so much, and I was so close to GJ, it crushed me. He had a terrible experience. He came back, to his credit now. He moved back. The first game of the playoffs of be his junior year.
Yeah.
And he's ineligible, obviously, right? And played scout team quarterback that whole playoff run while Tanner Barr was playing quarterback, and could not have done a better job of being a scout team quarterback. You talk about a humble dose of pie. You left because you weren't the starting quarterback. You come back, you're not even the backup now. You're the scout team quarterback. And McLean was incredible. And his senior year, that 2-minute or that 48-second drive, you need to pull it out. That was gunslinger mentality. The throws that kid made and how calm and cool he was down there, I was so happy for him because I just love him so much. And it doesn't surprise me at all. And so happy for him and all those kids. He was a leader in that locker room. He wasn't like GJ, like a larger-than-life personality. He was more of a guy they all went to his house. He was the Pied Piper. GJ was that way too. But GJ was louder and he could handle them in a different way. McLean was more of a quieter kid. Typical, little brother, not the big brother mantra, but man, those kids love McLean. They love that goofy rascal. And boy, he could sling a ball.
How about his poise, Jeff, in the second half of the state championship game when y'all were down and it got a little wild in the third quarter, and you know what happened in the fourth quarter? His poise in that game.
One of the biggest ones, we ran a slant and go sluggo to Nick and for an easy touchdown. And, I always say we give the defense too much credit. Let's not call it again. Matt and Allen, they don't ever want to call the play again because, we've already ran it once. I'm like, man, y'all give those guys too much credit. So me overstepping my boundaries, I called sluggo again. And they covered it just like Matt and Allen told me they were going to. But there's a check down on that play that we worked. We just never had got to it in the game. And McLean literally went to the sluggo, to the check down on 3rd down and 6 to Quinn Fluellen for an unbelievable first down to make your point about his composure down the stretch. Because we never had thrown the check down in the game. It had always worked for the touchdown. And for us to have called it for the second time shows you how mature of a guy he was.
I think people knew this, that were close to y'all, but obviously, hopefully, like after the book, people get this even more of a conviction of how freaking talented was your staff at Gilmer.
Again, a lot of credit to Rick Albritton. He didn't let me lose people. He'd find a way to help me keep them. And we were deep. We were deep at every position. The junior high doesn't get near enough credit. Max Lowe and Todd Fenton have been with me since the beginning. Now, I want you to think about that. I've had the same 2 junior high guys for 22 years. That stability on that staff, it's truly remarkable. Look at all the head coaches, the success they've had. I mean it. My job is to find the smartest, most high character people in the world, give them a clear-cut job description, get the hell out of their way, give them the time they need to be with their families, and pay them as much as I freaking can. It's a recipe for success. But man, it's hard getting out of the way, right? Because we all like to do more than we probably should be. But I try like hard just to serve my players and serve my coaches. And they're all been fantastic. And you're right. They're super talented. We started naming them all. We'd forget somebody for sure. But yeah. Tommy Edwards doesn't get talked about near enough. That guy's been with me forever on that staff. And so many guys. Nolan Hagler, man, my who cleaned that field house for me for so many years, who passed away a couple of years ago. Man, that shook me up. Because he had that belt on that sideline. Them guys weren't dressed correctly. He's the one guy that could whoop that belt. And there's so many people. Steve York, my trainer there, he's been with me the whole time. We're in the back the whole time. Amy, my secretary, with me that whole time. Just so many people. The Adopted Buckeye program that doesn't get talked about near enough. We had 25, 35 players. Nobody ever came and watched them play. So we started that just trying to get people to come. Mary Jo Dean just passed away. And Mary Jo would adopt 5 at a time just to make sure we had somebody come to the game to watch them play. Now every kid in Gilmer has about 5 parents that adopt them. It's just grown that much. Meet the Buckeyes, which Harlen would come, and they would. That thing is just, it's so awesome. I'm so proud, and I'm so grateful that Mr. Albritton and that school board continue to keep my guys there. You know, from Matt Turner to Alan Metzel, and who's going to be next on that step. We cannot ever let that thing get outside of that. There's going to be some sexy name out there they're going to want to hire one day. They don't understand what those men do for that community. I hope this book just kind of puts it in concrete that we never should go outside in Gilmer, Texas. We should only hire our own people to run that place. And I know there'll be business people say that's a recipe for disaster. I call hogwash. They don't know our culture. They don't know how deep that stuff runs. And let's keep that thing in the family.
There's one person I wanted you to talk about. I know because there's so many names, but there's one consistently through the book, just the way people talk about him, and especially how you spoke about him, whether that was in Jacksonville, at Gilmer, and obviously he's with you now, and that's Matt Turner. If you would just talk about him.
Yeah, he's been the biggest game changer of all of them for me. My middle child is named after him. Jake went 3 days without a middle name. I don't argue with Carrie very much. Her favorite movie was 16 Candles. So she wanted my son to be named Jacob Ryan Traylor. And that just wasn't going to happen, right? So my oldest son was Jordan Michael, because I still think Michael Jordan's the GOAT, right? And I'm Jeffrey Michael Traylor. So I wanted my middle child to be a JMT, and I wanted him to be named after Matt Turner, right? So for 3 days, it was Jacob blank Traylor, but I wasn't budging. So it's Jacob Matthew Traylor. Matt Turner is the single most greatest influence on my life. He still is. I spoke at San Angelo Friday. Matt drove all the way to San Angelo to hear me speak. Him and I never missed a clinic together. You know me, if they're not entertaining in 10 minutes, I'm out. Matt would not let me leave. He would grab me by my ear and make me sit there and listen to every speaker. And he's the most, God-fearing, loving man, the greatest coach, the greatest teacher. Why he chose me, I will never know. But he has served me at Jacksonville, at Gilmer, and here. And I can't say enough great words about him. And that's just, when you name your child after somebody, I don't know if you can say more than that.
Hunter, you and I did a podcast last week that it was more focused on you and the book. And I told the story that I always thought it was fascinating, the relationship between Matt and Coach Traylor was when their sons were seniors. And Jordan and Luke are both, going to be the quarterbacks. And if you were writing movies, you would have had this fierce rivalry, backstabbing, and coaches gunning for their guy. And it couldn't have been further from that. Everybody was all in to what was best for the team. And if Luke's the quarterback and Jordan is better at tight end, and then the Luke got hurt, and the coaches, it just works. It just really says something about both you and Coach Turner about what men you raised and how y'all handled that situation.
And it's I'm so glad you brought that up. They battled through their junior year through about game 5. And we made the decision to go with Luke. Now, Kerry Berry wasn't for that. I think I slept on the couch for most of that season. But the senior year, Tanner Barr was a sophomore, and he was going to be the quarterback of the future. Jordan, we were using him in so many ways, at wide receiver, at tight end, at fullback. So we made the decision to put Jordan at just that. He worked no quarterback. Now, understand, Luke broke his ankle in the Carthage game, like game 4, game 5. We're losing by, I want to say 7-10, whatever it was. There's like 8 or 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I said, Matt, what are we going to do here, Bubba? And he's like, Jeff, Tanner's not ready. You're going to have to go with Jordan. I'm like, Matt, he hasn't worked quarterback all summer, all fall camp. He hasn't worked quarterback. And I'm not doing this to my child. I wouldn't do this to anybody's child, much less my own child. He's like, Jeff, Jordan can handle it. He's done enough of it as a young kid. He'll be fine. And I'm like, man, I'm going to let this go, but this is not good for this kid, right? He's the head coach's son. He's not worked a rep of quarterback all his senior year. And that joker went out there and led us down the field on 2 consecutive scoring drives, executed. He played with 2 gloves on. He was such a tight end. He hadn't even had his gloves off because he hadn't played any quarterback. And we totally changed our offense the very next week. We started throwing it 40 times a game. And we just went bombs over Baghdad. Looking back at it, Matt, now we made a wrong choice. Luke should have been the tailback. Jordan was right. Jordan should have been the quarterback. Luke should have been the tailback and the Wildcat quarterback. We should have used Luke like we did Blake Lynch. And we should have used Jordan like we did McLean Carter. And we messed that one up. And, it ended up working out okay. We got beat by Argyle like the whole bunch. And I remember driving home after the game, listening to them on the radio. And we always went through and got us a blizzard at the Dairy Queen, me, Alan, and Matt. And Alan said, Jeff, how many passes do you think Jordan completed tonight? I'd say all. I said, probably 19, 20. He said, higher. I said, 25, 30. He's like, higher. He said, he's like 40 out of 46 or something, 40 out of 48. In his very last game it was just stupid how good the kid played. To Harlan's point, that was his very best friend. He was going to support Luke Turner to the very end. And I still believe we would have won the state championship with Luke at quarterback or Luke at tailback. I think that's one of my – he's probably the greatest high school football player I ever coached. Luke started for me as a freshman at outside linebacker on a state championship team. Sophomore at slot receiver on a semifinalist team. Junior at quarterback on a quarterfinalist team. And his senior year, he was the punter, the kicker, the quarterback, and could have been whatever I needed to be.
Awesome. You haven't seen this yet, but the last episode, Dr. Elza, Coach King, and Jack Stallard all said kind of like their final statements, something that they always liked and respected about you and have always felt a part of your journey is that you've never forgotten your roots and what made you. And that ultimately is what makes you so special. The book is centered around Gilmer, but it's really, as you'd said, even to open it, it's about the entire East Texas region. What do you hope people know about your path and really the entire East Texas area?
The memories, of how I was formed and how I've just learned something from everybody. The stories are so specific in my own mind. I think that's always what amazes people the most, about me, is that I remember the smallest details about one conversation from so many years ago. And Ron Boyette believing I was special at such a young age, or Dan Knoll, or just weird things that people they don't even remember. Like they don't even remember pouring that into me. That's what I hope I hope people forget how bad I was to officials those first 7 years. Larry Clemens was so good for me at Gilmer because Larry did my Thursday night games. And we were such good friends, he would not do my Friday night game. He's like, Jeff, those guys want to like you. They want to like you. You won't let them like you. You're just such a jackass to everybody. Nobody wants to like you. And he would describe it like, those guys are your biggest fans. They have normal jobs. They make very little money. They love football. And Larry it's kind of like, what Mr. Rogers says. Well, once you know somebody's story, it's kind of hard not to love them. And once I kind of learned the official stories, I just started treating them better. I wish I'd have done that better. I was always good to the media. I was really good there. I don't think I ever lost. David and I had a couple of those. I didn't like Smokey, certain things there early, but even I understood the purpose of David Smoke. And we've become very close later on. But officials, I wish I could go back and do that one over. At the end, I was really good to them. But man, the Jeff Traylor now, this version, y'all are getting a way better version. Harlan probably can tell you some stories and some things that were probably quite embarrassing.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story. An official told me that he was calling one of your games, and when the first time out came, it was like real hot, early September, and it was 99 degrees at 7:30. And when your water girls would go running onto the field, he said they always came to the officials first. And he told me about that.
That must have been 2007 on. I was starting to grow up a little bit, right? I got to be a head coach so young. When you're that young, that's a lot of pressure on a kid, and especially going home where, I do remember Danny saying, even Jesus wasn't successful when he went home. He said, if you go back and you're not successful, I'll hire you back. go give it a shot. And to be hired on a 4-3 vote. Now, it says 4-2 in the newspaper, but that other person that abstained, I mean, it was a no. And, you know, no contract, probationary contract. You talk about betting on yourself. Took a $17,000 pay cut. It was scary. I remember not sleeping at all for 2 years. And thank God for Olin Johnson. I mean, I will always be forever grateful. If I could have coached Olin 2004 on, Olin plays in the Big 12 and SEC and maybe in the National Football League. I just didn't get there quick enough.
Hey, Hunter, I want to tell one more story before we get out of here. I want people to know about Coach Traylor. I did a little math here before we started, and in the book, you chronicle the beginning of the game of the week. And the two guys that I leaned on, this was a project I worked on for 3 years, were John King and Jeff Traylor. And in the springtime, I'd drive out to Gilmer. I'd go into his office. Amy would get me 10 minutes with him, which would turn into a half hour or an hour. And he would tell me the things I got to do to make a game of the week, to get coaches to move to Saturday or move to Thursday to play their varsity game. And Coach Traylor impressed upon me, you've got to give these kids a scholarship. Tell the coaches you're going to give the kids a scholarship. And that was my project. And I went out and found sponsorship so that I could do that. And we're fixing to start our 11th season of the game of the week. And to this date, we've given away 104 $1,005 college scholarships. And think about, and we've already got booked 24 more. So that's 128 kids that Jeff Traylor indirectly helped with their education into college by giving me the time and the tutelage to show me how to put something on like the game of the week. And I couldn't have done it without him. And I think about those 128 kids, 24 of them haven't even got the scholarship yet, but they will this year and next year. You impacted their lives. And they're not even your school students.
Well, I appreciate it. And it was a blast. It was fun. And we loved doing it. And we'd move around. You know, I learned that from John King. John King would do what was best for the game. If I called John King on a Wednesday night and I needed a 9th grade B game, he'd send over a 9th grade C team. He didn't care as long as those kids played. And one time, John didn't have a coach and I couldn't find a coach. John drove the kids over. He coached the Lobos. I coached the Buckeyes in like a 9th grade B battle royale.
He told that story.
Yeah. Oh, it was the best. I think it ended in a 6-6 tie. Perfect for John King.
Yes.
A nightmare for me. Nightmare. For John, it was perfect.
No, he told that story the last time we recorded. It was awesome. And yes.
Nothing he wouldn't do. Nothing John King would never do. I mean, he taught me so much about how to treat the game. Because, you know, I had a chip on my shoulder being from Gilmer. And it was us against the world for a long time before I kind of grew up and became an adult and started embracing others along the way.
You nailed it. Yeah, Coach, I've never met doing this project the past few years. And then he kind of getting to interact with some people from your hometown and others in Jacksonville. I don't think I've ever met anybody that was so good where everybody felt like they really knew you and that you were their friend. And I think that's really hard to do. I think that's a gift that you have. And it was just so much fun to get to work on this. It's been a lot of work, and I hope you're really proud of it. But I want to thank you so much for trusting me enough with some sensitive stuff and to try and do it justice. And I really did. I gave it my best shot, and I feel good about it. I think the rubric we set, I don't know how it'll be received nationally or whatever, but I think we told a heck of a story. And it's meaningful to a lot of people. I just want to thank you so much for everything that you did for me. So,
well, you're the best, Hunter. You come from unbelievable people, and you're about the right stuff, brother. And Harlen, I appreciate you, and tell the old pigskin I said hello and what up as well. And I look forward to. I hope there's some people there that night. You know, the 30th and the 1st. I'd love to hug some people's necks and just say thank you. Yep. And whatever happens, you know how this business is. Hell, I could be the GOAT in a year, and I could be the head coach of Texas in a year. In this business, you don't know. But what I do want people to know is no matter what happens, I hope I don't change, right? I hope when it's over and I'm buried one day, all y'all say, you know what? He stayed true to the very end. And if I can do that, then job well done, right? So I appreciate y'all very much.
When the UT thing was coming to an end, you remember the conversation we had? We were talking, and I said, well, heck, in 2 years, coach, you're either going to be the head coach at Iowa or the head coach at Big Sandy. And he said, Harlen, I'll be happy either way.
I will. Now,
I know.
Care Bear might not be, but I wouldn't give a damn. You let me have some kids in the locker room, I'm good to go, man. I'm good to go.
This is awesome. Thank y'all both so much. Draw the Line comes out June 28th. We're doing some events June 30th, Duds on the Lake in Gilmer, Texas, Tomato Bowl Press Box July 1st, and then July 11th in Marshall. And we'll be around Texas High School Coaching School in San Antonio.
Hunter, let me give you one more
Go ahead.
I'm going to give y'all one more small story. This is crazy. I don't know if you know this, Hunter. Do you know, like, my hashtag 210 Triangle of Toughness? Do you know originally what the hashtag was when I got hired?
No.
Draw the line.
Yeah.
Do you know why it's been taken down? It was seen as exclusionary. That, like, I was being exclusionary by drawing a line and asking people to step over it. So some professor got pissed off and they made my AD and my president take it away. If you go back and look at my very first Twitter, all of them are draw the line.
I didn't know that.
And I guarantee you my AD and my president think I'm being a smart ass by telling Hunter to put draw the line as the name of my book.
Not at all. No.
That's fascinating to me.
I'll tell you how it was, because the name was kind of like, we were floating around a couple different titles. Alan Metzel called me one night out of the blue and says, Hunter, I've told you a lot. He goes, there's one story I haven't told you. You need to know about this.
That
And
week.
You got it. And he went through thoroughly.
It's fourth down and a foot.
Yeah.
And
He
I
went
literally
through,
told them kids, hell, this is it, man. We're going to draw the damn line. And we know we're giving the ball to Dalen Mack. We're going to draw the damn line.
He did. But he goes, Hunter, that thing also was, it's imagery for what ultimately you did. He says, all of us are a part of this, but he said, ultimately what Jeff did in his hometown is what you said earlier, drew a line. This is my hometown. We're going to have a certain standard, and I'm not backing down. And
Another part, the last piece that doesn't get talked about enough, and you might have in the book,
Yeah.
you know, what's to finally get those girls where they are now.
It's in there. Stacy Cruz.
Getting Stacy to come back and convincing my school board that if you ever want my legacy to be right, if y'all don't fix this damn thing, it's going to always be all Jeff cared about is the boys.
Yes.
Now, it just so happens J.C. Traylor's coming through about that time too, damn it. And we were going to make sure J.C. Traylor got the best through.
And how about this too, though, is kind of like one of the things that show results. Brand new high school. What, 2 years ago, top of the line, enrollment's up.
Would not have happened.
Doesn't take a backseat to anybody.
I agree. All that makes me, the high school and the girls program are things that, you know, indirectly, kind of like Harlan's scholarships. I didn't have a lot to do with it, but I was a piece of that, and that makes me feel really good.
No.
All right, man. Harlan, you were going to say something. I cut you off.
I wanted to say Coach Traylor is okay, but the book is great. Okay. And if you want to learn more about Hunter Taylor, I did a podcast with him last week. It's on KYKX1057.com. Scroll down to the podcast. Because I work for them, that's the only way you can get it. So go to KYKX1057.com. And I interviewed him, and we talked about the book and your relationship with him.
I'll do that. Do you mind texting me that, Harlan? Just like I'll make sure and do that.
I will.
Thank you.
Before every game, don't I?
Yeah, you do. And I respond every time. If I don't respond, you better call my ass out.
No, sometimes it comes in late at night because I know you're busy. But yeah, I text you before every game.
I've had the same number all these years. I have 27,000 contacts now. And I bet you when I win, I get about 22,000. And when I lose, I get about 200.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to post Jeff's number on the website. So people can...
I'll see y'all, man. Love y'all.
Thanks,
Thank
Coach.
you.
See y'all.
Thanks, Hunter.